Hello and welcome to the Wee Ood podcast, an unofficial Doctor Who podcast. My name is Cameron, and I am here with my co-host Ben. How you doing today, Ben?
As always, I'm doing very well.
One day you're gonna be like, I'm doing terrible.
Yep.
It's gonna be
One
like,
day.
all right, now we have to do a therapy session. Today we're gonna be discussing the Doctor Who episode Inferno, the last episode of season 7. So we're gonna be done with season 7 by this point. We'll probably be talking about the season as a whole at the end of the episode. So, just to start things off, we're going to be discussing first the credits for the episode. So, it was directed by Douglas Camfield. Do you know who Douglas Camfield is, Ben?
That doesn't sound familiar.
So, he's kind of one of the great Doctor Who directors. He directed The Time Meddler, Dalek's Master Plan, The Web Affair, The Invasion. He did this episode, then he'll go on to do Terror of the Zygons and The Seeds of Doom.
Ooh, that's a pretty good track record.
Oh, yeah. The thing about this episode is that he didn't direct all of it. He had a heart attack during the production.
Oh, damn.
So Barry Letts came in with his directing background, having directed already an episode Doctor before this, the Enemy of the World. So he came in and he did mostly the studio stuff, which this story would be a lot of like the buildings.
Yeah.
He would have done a lot of that stuff for episodes 3 through 7. And then Douglas still did a lot of the outside recording. But yeah, it's definitely, like I said, one of the great Doctor Who directors. Then the writer of this episode is Don Houghton. He just goes on to do The Mind of Evil next, which is a serial that's going to be next season. And then, of course, like I say all the time, not all the time, but for the foreseeable future, I'm probably going to stop doing this after this episode because it's kind of going to get repetitive. Barry Letts was the producer, and then Terrence Dix was the script editor. And just to start off with the fun facts, Ben, this would be also when I would talk about who did the music, but I think I read that this is the last story to ever use just stock BBC music. So it doesn't have an official composer for the score, which I read that actually a lot of them was made by the same woman, Delia. Delby, why am I having a...
Delia Derbyshire?
That's the name. She did a lot of those sounds. So it's kind of like this is her kind of doing the score in a way. And then again, like I said, the Barry Letts did some of the studio stuff for episodes 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Something that I found interesting is that Shelley Dunn's character, who is Petra Williams, she was supposed to be played by the actress Kate O'Mara, who will go on to play the Ronnie in Doctor Who, which is another Time Lord.
I've heard of her, yeah.
That's going to be introduced in the 80s. And that was kind of a fun bit of casting. Another one is in this story, Greg Sutton, that actor who is Derek Newark. He should be familiar to you, Ben. He was in Doctor Who previously to this. He played one of the cavemen in Unearthly Child.
Oh, really?
So this is kind of his this is his second appearance.
His grand return? Oh, he was Za.
Yeah. Something that I found interesting is, I don't know how much you read about the production of it.
I don't read anything about the production.
Basically, Don Houghton came in with the idea of the digging through the Earth's crust. And Barry Letts and Terrence Dix were kind of scared that's like, oh no, this is not going to be enough material to hit the 7-potter length. And then Terrence Dix came up with the idea of the parallel Earths, which kind of makes it so that it can be 7 pots. And it's a very genius idea. We'll get into it.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of really does save the story, that idea of having the parallel universe.
Oh, yeah.
Another fact is also that this is the first time in Doctor Who that we have a parallel world.
The first time?
Yeah, unless there's a time before that unless you want to fight the TARDIS fandom.
No, I just didn't know they were more future. I mean, I guess it should be expected to have future parallel worlds. Up till now, it's been kind of under the assumption, I mean, maybe that's just me, that time is linear. When the Doctor meddles in history, it's because he always did, like the first Doctor is who came up with the idea for the Trojan horse. He didn't change anything. It always just was that.
Like in season 2 in particular of New Who, there's a very big storyline with parallel worlds.
Really?
Oh yeah, and I don't can't remember off the top of my head any parallel world stories that's in classic Doctor Who. There probably is. It's just not coming to me. But I think but like it's not really a common thing in Doctor Who. But there's a couple of things, and there's a whole parallel universe segment of Big Finish called Unbound, and there's an Unbound Doctor who is kind of like this parallel universe Doctor,
Have heard of that.
which I can't really speak about because I've never heard any of those. Of David Warner as the Doctor. But I think it's now time. Ben, what did you think of Inferno?
It was really great. I can definitely see why so many sources call it one of the best classic Doctor Who stories. It took me a little bit to get fully on board. I'm like, it can't be that great. And then there is I'm sure we'll talk about the scene at the end of episode 1, which was really awesome. And then he goes into the parallel world, and I'm on board from then on. It gets really, really interesting.
There's those times that like with anything that's not even like Doctor Who related, but like you have these things that are kind of cemented in the culture as like this is a classic.
Mhm.
And then you watch it and you're like, oh actually no, this is as good as people say it is in the world on the street.
Yeah, I was a little bit skeptical, but it definitely is really great. Best third Doctor story so far, at the very least.
Oh yeah, like Sparehead I would say is very good. But in terms of season 7, this is the best story.
Yeah.
I also loved it. I think this is probably one of the best classic Doctor Who stories. I'm kind of shocked that, not shocked, but I'm kind of like, I wish I saw this earlier because I think I would have loved it. And
Oh, right. Yeah, this was the first time you watched it.
yeah, so watching it for the first time, I was so blown away by it. And I would say this as a 7-parter in particular worked very well because of the parallel worlds thing. Like
Yeah.
the Solarians and Ambassadors of Death, the both of us kind of agreed that we felt the 7 parts.
Yeah, there was definitely some filler and just waiting around. I mean, for Inferno, you could maybe squeeze it into 6, but it works well with 7 when you're jumping back and forth between the worlds.
I think like it probably would be like if we're really saying like what would be best, it would probably would work best as a 6-parter if we just cut out like a little bit from the beginning and a little bit from the last part.
Yeah. That's at some point you're kind of going in circles where Stallman's like, "No, I'm not going to do it." And Sutton is like, "No, you have to do it." And Stallman is, "No, I'm not going to do it." For that happens like 20 times. You could probably cut half of those out, but
Yeah.
even still, it's really, really great.
And like I gotta say, I love the guest cast for this one.
Oh, yeah.
I thought the actor that played Dr. Stallman was very, very good. And then the guy who, like I mentioned before, the guy who played Greg Sutton was also really good in his role.
Oh, absolutely.
And then we have to talk about Nicholas Courtney, who it does such a good job as a fascist, like commander,
Oh, yeah. Really great.
like just absolutely kills it. He said that this was his favorite episode of his, and you can see why as an actor you'd be like, yeah, I love, I love my work in it.
Oh, yeah. Him and Carolyn John, I think that's Liz actor, right?
Yeah,
They both had a lot of fun being kind of semi-evil. Yeah, they did a great job. I think having the dichotomy of these two different but similar versions of the characters, I think really cemented for me their strengths. Like I'm definitely fully on board with the Brigadier now. He's really good, cool and interesting. And I think Liz is even just the main universe version of her. I think it's the best that she's been so far.
which is kind of a shame because this is her last story.
Yeah, I'm very curious what the story explanation is for her absence. Like right now it doesn't seem to make sense why she would not, be continuing forward? There must be some kind of production reason.
I was watching it and I was like, when like the doctor dematerialized in like the lost spot, being like, "Bye, Brigadier. I'm not gonna miss you. I'm gonna miss you, Liz." And then he dematerializes. I was like, "All right." So then this is when Liz is gonna have a big moment of like, "I'm done with Unit," and she's gonna walk off.
Yeah, I thought exactly the same thing.
But then it's just like, and then it's just like, nope, we're just gonna end it. And it's like, and just by the way, Callan John is not in Terror of the Autons at all. So, like, to my recollection, I don't remember them really spending that much time on it.
Yeah, I looked on the wiki. She's in nothing until the Five Doctors,
Yeah,
which is very surprising.
yeah, but like, it is a shame because she is very good in this story. It would have been cool to see how they would have progressed her as a character with more story.
Yeah.
Of course, I think this is something that we have to bring up quite early on in this discussion. How did you think of the Doctor mentioning Batman, Ben?
Oh, I mean, sure. Yeah.
But it's one of those moments in the show. It's like this is real world, I guess. Like they are living, like they know Batman exists.
I mean, I guess.
Like we get like in the new series, they mention like Spock, and they mention like J.K. Rowling in like Harry Potter. It's like, and like the weirder thing about the Spock thing is that like there is a Star Trek, Doctor Who comic book crossover.
Really.
So if that's canon, it's weirder that it's also a TV show in this universe.
Isn't there like a air quotes Star Trek show that's within the Doctor Who canon, like a fake show within Doctor Who?
Not my recollection. I wonder what you're thinking of. Because no, I don't. I'm not, I don't. I don't think so.
Hold on, give me 1 second.
Yeah, you're gonna look it up.
I'm thinking of something very specific. Inspector Spacetime.
From what?
Oh, okay, never mind. This is something I saw it on Reddit randomly. The TV show Community, it's their Doctor Who parody, Inspector Spacetime. That's what I was thinking of.
Oh, that makes so much sense because I'm like Nightshade. Like there's a the book that I'm reading right now. The actor in it plays basically a Quatermass character. Remember, like I was saying, like Quatermass was the what it kind of inspired the Third Doctor.
Doesn't sound familiar.
Quatermass was basically there. It was a scientist who had a group of military that would go after alien invasions and evil scientists. It's like it's very much the Third Doctor. What did you think of the idea of having this story be about drilling into the basically the central idea of the story being to drill into the Earth's crust and then having the dangers of that?
Yeah, I would have to think that this is based on like some real life politics, some kind of concern about oil drilling or geothermal.
So what happened was that this is based off of the American project of Project Mohole, which was when they were which was a project of them drilling deep into the Earth's crust, basically. And basically, the writer of this episode, Don Huden, was interested in this, called up the American embassy and was like, "Hey, can I have some information about that?" And they said, "No, that's classified information." And then he kind of was like, "Hmm," and that's how he came up with this story.
Really interesting. Yeah, it's definitely.
Very scientifically accurate.
I'm sure this is 100% accurate, but it's an interesting premise to base it around. Setting the parallel world stuff aside. And I guess it's kind of unexplained why there's this green goo, and when you touch it, you become like an ape. They never really figured that out.
Well, actually, That's probably because another thing I should have probably said during the fun fact stuff is the talking about the production elements. Like a lot of Doctor Who stuff, they were writing this, and then they were like, "There's something missing," and as you could probably imagine, what was missing was a monster.
Yeah.
So that's why the monster was included.
You can't have a Doctor Who story without a monster.
No, we need something for the kids to play.
Bug-eyed monster.
So that's why, and it works just having the green goo be the thing that's going to turn you into a werewolf. So basically, I would just say my thoughts, and then we can go move into the Primoids.
Do they have a name?
Do they mention it all? I'm getting this off of the internet. It's the Primoids. Do they mention that at all? I assume not, because like they would be like, oh yes, the Primoids, because they wouldn't know the name of the creatures.
The primordial mutant creatures are named Primords in the closing credits of episodes 5 and 6.
Primoids.
So they're in the credits.
So you said Primords.
Yeah, like primordial, Primords.
Okay, I was close. So just before we go on to the Primords, I would just say that, like, no, I think the drilling is a great introductory concept for a Doctor Who story. Kind of similar in some ways, I thought, to the Doctor Who and the Silurians, of like, oh, we're very much in the same type of setting as that nuclear reactor.
Yeah, very similar.
In terms of at least like visuals, and then even they were kind of like they were in the caves. I think they were doing some type of drilling. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong.
What were they doing?
That's a great question.
Just experiments that cannot be stopped. You are interfering. Get this man out of here.
I really did love Professor Stallman's like his like, I was gonna say greed, but like that's not a good word to say. It's like his commitment to his dream.
Yes. He is really great. Very hateable and punchable. Someone needs to just shake him and say, you're gonna cause this place to explode.
And I wrote that like part 2 was very much centered around him. And there's a great quote in part 2 where he said, "If I listened to all others, the Patriot Project would have never begun, and if I listened to them now, it would never be completed."
Mm-hmm.
Which is something that he kind of runs throughout the whole 7 parts of the story. You could just sum up that sentence as his thought process behind the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, he gets kind of, his mind is being influenced by the primordial jelly.
I was just going to say
But
green goo.
I think that kind of core ideal of his is throughout.
I think it's such a great premise, even though it is kind of, like I said, similar to the Silurians in terms of at least we're in scientists setting that's kind of more the doctor and the brigadier's not really in charge. We have these other people that's running the project that are in charge. But it still works very well.
It makes sense, with the doctor exiled, there's only so many places you can go on Earth that are going to have spooky science stuff happening.
Yeah. And just to move on, so now the Primords avoids whatever the fuck the werewolves, Ben. What did you think of the werewolves?
They were good. Very, I think I've say this every single time, but very menacing. There's the incomplete version of them just running around outside, and then there's the full-on like ape men. And I think I like the pre-ape men design better, where they're just like gray and drooly. I think they're scarier that way rather than just like ape men. I don't know. I've been watching a lot of Planet of the Apes, but what do you think?
I will agree with you that I thought that the pre-designs, that when it was kind of more just they're blue men, worked very much more than when they became werewolves.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like that like the teeth prosthetic really doesn't hold up that well. It looks very much like, oh yeah, they're wearing fake like canine teeth.
Yeah, when they're outside and they're more stocky and look just like insane gray green.
More kind of like zombies instead of werewolves.
Yeah, more zombie-ish, less werewolf-ish. I think I would have preferred if they stayed like that throughout.
Especially like when we got like Benton's teeth really looked like they were fake. when he became in I think either part 5 or part 6.
I think that it would be part 5.
Yeah. Yeah, it was part 5. Yep. It's a good they wouldn't really support it if we didn't have a strong enough story in terms of like we have Stammen as kind of the real antagonist of the story, and then even the Doctor has the antagonist of the fascist military that he also has to put up with.
That's something kind of interesting. Each of these 4 stories has kind of had a monster, but then like just a man behind the monster pulling the strings to greater and lesser extents.
Yeah, this kind of leads me to the next thing where we can talk about is that like I particularly noticed that the third Doctor is very much a Doctor that's in command. He's always knows what to do. He's always like when he has unit behind him, he has this military power behind him.
Yeah.
But in this story, they kind of take that away from him, and like he's not in command. He is very much like he has the whole world basically against him.
Oh yeah.
He's very much like he has to really fight to be in control again in this story.
Yeah, in the parallel world.
Like even in the real world, he doesn't have that much power. But like especially when we got to the parallel universe, he was like we haven't seen the third Doctor this low before, basically.
Yeah, being tortured and threatened and about to be executed.
Even though we have seen him be kidnapped and imprisoned the 3 past stories, well, 2 past stories, and now including this one.
Oh yeah. And in the murder game, he's on the firing squad, about to be shot.
Well, we're just talking third
I know.
Doctor.
Yeah.
And the war games, he's also that, and like there's some like it's a big massive trope in classic Doctor Who that he gets kidnapped, which of course this story continues. Because like I don't know if you're aware of it, but in like the new Who, the Doctor they came up with an idea to get the Doctor out of these type of scenarios where he would be in an environment where they would just imprison him. So he has like the psychic paper,
Yeah.
which is basically allows him just to have any identity that he would want.
I remember that.
And this is a story that if he had that, we would cut like a good 2 or 3 parts of this story if we just got to. All right, we know we trust this man. Now we can just get going. It's like he can just be like, oh yeah, I'm a scientist guy, and the brigade would be like, okay, you're fine. Let's go. Let's take care of this business and deal with the crust exploding. Maybe if he had the sonic paper, not the sonic paper, if he had the psychic paper, then maybe that world wouldn't be destroyed. Which let's talk about that. Like, how did you feel that like that world got like the world in this story? Like, it's very rare that the world actually ends, but because they're in that parallel universe, the world actually ends, and that gives this story kind of at least that like last pot 6. I should say not that last pot, but like the last pot in the parallel universe, real stakes.
Oh yeah. I like how so much of it is just like we know we fucked up. There's no going back from this. Now we're just gonna do everything that's possibly in our power to make sure it doesn't happen again in the other universe.
Which there's something kind of an interesting moral dilemma there.
Yeah, and everyone is, obviously scared to die horribly, but is willing to try their best. I thought Greg Sutton was, in particular, really great, very brave and courageous. I was reminded a lot of Ian.
Oh yeah, like you could totally see in a world that he would have been a companion-like character.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
I thought that Petra, she was also great in this too. Who I found out that I didn't mention this. The fun facts. I had so many fun facts I didn't mention. She was married to Douglas Camfield, the director.
Really?
But she does a great job, in particular, like in Pot 6, when the brigade is like rushing her, and she's just like, "There's some things you just can't like rush." Basically, like just puts them down in his place. Pot 6 in particular is very strong when we had that like whole end of the world facing against these characters. And I kind of feel like one of my very few critiques with the story is that it's kind of hard for a story to recover from that. Like you have the dual world, so we kind of have to address our world,
Yeah.
but it's kind of hard when we just witnessed in the previous week's episode the end of the world. So getting like it's kind of hard to like reinvest yourself into this other storyline when we kind of already reached the peak of storytelling can do, basically.
A little bit. I think it's the last episode is sufficiently tense though. As you know, the doctor is unconscious. We're almost out of time. The world, this world, the real world, the one we should care about, is on the verge of destruction as well.
Oh yeah, I would say like it's a very minor critique. But like
Yeah. We spend a lot of time in the parallel world.
yeah, and like I do like the idea of when the doctor comes back, he is unconscious. So that does like what you said leads to a little bit more suspense there when we are like, oh my god, what is like how is the doctor going to be able to save this? And then he of course is able to give them the correct information for them to save the day.
Yeah, with 30 seconds to spare.
Which is like they could have done like 5 seconds or like really waited to like 5, 4, 3, 2. Nope, we just gonna we got 30 seconds. We had plenty of time.
Yeah, the actual like the doctor when he eventually just goes in and just fixes everything. That felt a little bit anticlimactic.
Yeah. But that's kind of like a very classic Doctor Who thing that like at the ending it's like, all right, like we understand.
Yeah, people listen to him now. He'll just get it done. The specifics don't matter.
And then especially for the third Doctor stuff, it's like, yeah, the Brigadier is just gonna the unit's gonna come in and they're gonna sweep everything under the rug and gonna be able to fix this back to where it was.
Hmm.
Okay, so I think for in terms of general discussion, do you have anything else to say about this story, Ben, that we did not talk about?
I thought in episode 3, I guess it would be. I think the doctor, we have the great chase scene when the doctor driving Bessie around, people are jumping in the car. I think that part was great. After that, I think the doctor thinks that this whole thing is just one big prank way too long.
Cool fact about that chase scene, the car chase.
Mm-hmm.
John Pertwee did all of his own stunts there. That was all him driving.
Really? He seems that cool.
Pretty cool. Like John Pertwee was just that cool.
Yeah. But it took a while for the doctor, I think, to understand what happened. Longer than I would expect a man of his caliber to, thinking it's just a prank.
This alien being.
Yeah. I mean, I got a couple more moments I thought were
Yeah,
really
let's
good.
just let's talk about them. List them out.
Yeah. I thought in episode 2, him using Venusian karate was kind of funny and kind of cool.
Which is a great way for like the doctor to deal with conflict.
Mhm.
Because of course he can't be somebody that does
No, he would never like punch someone in the face.
yeah.
He always it's like a Vulcan nerve pinch kind of thing, where a low violence way to end conflict.
Yeah. Which it's like it fits with the doctor's character.
Yes,
Like
definitely.
it's the doctor can't like use a gun. Or if he does, it has to be very limited.
Oh, I think they just call it a door handle. The little metal rods that they used to open and close the door of the hut. I thought at first that was like a sonic screwdriver, but
I did too, to the point that I was writing in my notes. Oh, the first use of the Sonic by John Pertwee, but no,
just a door handle
it's
that he retrofitted to a random door in this facility that you can just kind of open with your hands if you want to.
definitely my headcanon. There's that it's some type of Sonic device that the Doctor made.
He's like tinkering around. This is a prototype.
Like no, well, like I would assume in my head, like that he would just have like Sonic technology that he would just be like messing around with.
Hmm.
Another line in Part 3 that I wrote down that said, when John Pertwee was being interrogated, he was like, "But I don't exist in this world." And then the brigade was like, "Well, you wouldn't feel the bullets when we shoot you." I love that
Oh
line.
yeah, that was a good line. And in episode 1, well, actually, first, he answers my question. This is that I had in the beginning of the Ambassadors, that he did just rip the console out of the TARDIS. We still have yet to see the inside of the TARDIS, which it feels weird that all of the complicated things of the TARDIS are literally in just the console.
Especially when we get to like the new series stuff where we basically are told that the TARDIS is alive.
Yeah. It's a little weird.
Kind of a sad fact is that that console, that's the original TARDIS console. They didn't change it by this point.
Mhm.
This is the last time we see that.
Really?
Next time is gonna be a new TARDIS console.
Oh, cool. But yeah, them using it in the first episode when he gets to the kind of purgatory between the worlds and his face is all morphing and he's calling out and there's like epileptic flashes of light. I thought that was really cool. Reminds me a lot of that first episode of The Mind Robber. I wish they did more just weird, cool shit like that.
Yeah. And like then we have the effect I didn't think was that great when they were
Yeah.
doing like in between when we did the very few cuts back to the real world. I thought that was kind of lame. I wish that they maybe did something a little bit better, but it works to clearly signify. Oh yeah, this is we're changing universes here.
Yeah.
Like I think that in some ways I wonder how if it could have been better if they did do a little bit better pacing in terms of the pacing between the two worlds because we spent a lot of time at that other universe that we kind of forget what's happened. I shouldn't say forget, but we kind of stop paying attention to that universe, the real universe, for at least 2 parts or parts and a half. We don't see it at all.
Yeah. I mean, the doctor isn't there. Stallman is still not listening to anybody. We see him, I guess, accidentally almost kill Sir Keith, but that's about it.
Look at the road! Ah! It is kind of funny when he comes back with the fucking a cast
Sling.
and a sling. Yeah. Right. You know what, Ben? I think it's time for cliffhangers. So let's just start off with part one's cliffhanger at the nuclear power surge with Welcome jumping out. I'm having a blank.
I couldn't tell you any of the names of like the people that turn.
I'm having a blank of what even was this cliffhanger, man.
The doctor is like inspecting it, and the guy jumps out of the closet, and it's like
Yep, I
and then
remember
we
now.
cut.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just a spooky man in the closet, just
Yeah.
fucking.
Is that the first time we
going
see
cool.
him? See the Primord?
See, you asking me something that I watched a while. I watched this a couple of days.
Yeah, I watched this last week.
This was the first part, so it's like it's hard for me to be like. No, I think we do see something. We do, yeah. We see someone before this. That the unit. I think unit is chasing somebody.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So yeah, it's a very standard cliffhanger. The next cliffhanger is that the Doctor dematerializes in part 2, which is a great cliffhanger because you're like, oh, what's gonna happen? Part 3's cliffhanger is the Doctor needs to fix the computer, but is threatened with gunshot. I mean, is threatened.
Is that Benton?
Yeah, Benton threatens to shoot him. I think that's a really good cliffhanger. Then part 4, which I think is probably my favorite cliffhanger.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Stallman is holding the Doctor at gunpoint, but there's a cliffhanger this time. So it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh yeah. The final countdown of the drill about to penetrate.
Any cliffhanger with a countdown already makes it stronger.
Oh yeah. That was definitely my favorite one.
And then just the last cliffhanger is just a Primor just broke out of the door and is just going to enter the room that they all are in.
Yeah, breaks the glass.
Which is just a pretty standard cliffhanger. But we can both agree that it's part 4 with being held at gunpoint by Stallman.
Yeah. What about episode 6?
Oh yeah, I forgot. Oh yeah, there's an episode 6.
Yeah, everything explodes and wave of lava encroaches on the hut. We don't even see him dematerialize. He's just like,
No, he says like I can't.
yeah.
I can't.
And Petra screams and lava. That's a pretty good one too, I think.
Oh yeah.
They're definitely getting better at doing the like blue screen. I don't think it's a green screen. It looks blue.
I think it's called color separation. It's different from what we would typically would call like blue screen or green screen, which is why it kind of looks shadier.
Yeah,
Because like I think it would be like done in camera.
but they're getting better with that.
But yeah, I would say it's Part 4 is their best cliffhanger out of the bunch.
It's not a cliffhanger, but the end of episode 7, I think, was really good.
Oh yeah, definitely.
With the brigadier and the doctor insulting each other, he says goodbye, fuck you, and teleports away to a pile of garbage and says, well, I didn't mean it after all the years we've worked together. And the last thing we see is Liz laughing.
You mentioned like previously of just like the brigadier is kind of not being 100% in support of the doctor and kind of getting frustration about that. I think that's kind of sums that up, that was intentional, and like they do like they're bros.
Yeah. Sometimes they are at odds, but when it comes down to it, they have each other's back.
Which like I think this like you mentioned this earlier. It is a great episode of showing off the brigadier's and the doctor's relationship. In that moment in particular, and also like previously in that episode where he's like, "You do look better with a mustache."
Mm-hmm.
One of the standouts of this episode is Nicholas Courtney, and he is just wonderful.
Yeah. Both the brigadier and the brigade leader are awesome.
Which, when you consider that Douglas Campfield is the one that I believe he casted him as the brigadier in Web Affair, and he used him previously before that in Dalek Master Plan, so it kind of makes sense that he would know how to use Courtney. I guess it would be mostly Barry Letts. Any like final thoughts, Ben, of this episode before we move on to where this list is in the rankings?
Nothing I haven't already said. It was a really, really great episode.
So in the rankings from 2023, 2014, 2009, and 1998, guess what, Ben? It was the number 1 ranked story.
I'm not surprised at all.
And you kind of yeah, like it makes sense that this is in the top tier of Doctor Who. And it's always kind of interesting when we get stories that's fallen out from what was loved in like 1998 in particular through now. But it kind of makes sense that the story would hold up for somebody watching it in the 90s, and then somebody like us that's watching it for the first time in the 2020s still being like, yeah, this holds up.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's in it that's like we're seeing it now and like, oh my god, this is so much this what it's saying is so much more powerful now in 2023. It's just like it just works so well as a well-paced action serial.
Absolutely.
That it's gonna probably stay in that number 1 spot for the next poll and the poll after that.
100%, yeah. Visually, it's held up pretty well too. With Ambassadors and the Silurians, some of the color was a little wonky, but I thought this episode looked great.
Oh yeah, like I'm very excited to see what this would look like when they do the Blu-ray restoration of season 7. I think the story is going to look very well. There is actually one bit of it that they did do like manually, like because they only had like the 16 millimeter black and white tape, so they did colorize it like by hand, which they did a good enough job because I couldn't even tell you what bit that was.
Oh yeah, I couldn't either.
But definitely, like I would say, the best thing I could say about this story is that when season 7 Blu-ray does come out, and when I pick it up, I think that the first story that I'll put in the Blu-ray player is going to be Inferno.
Oh yeah. Seeing this in HD, do they have like the film for it?
I don't think we would have like the native 16 for this. Let me see what we have.
Do you know at what point did they stop junking? And at what point are the episodes just stuff that they have always had and not stuff that they have found or recreated?
So all I know is for certain, right, is that we have everything. I think Tom Baker would basically be the point that would happen, because when it comes to one of the last John Pertwee episodes, Invasion of the Dinosaurs, remember that one is stole. I believe a part is stolen black and white. So it's like that one's, or no, I think they did make that in color. There is sections of that one that we only had the black and white for that.
I'm looking it up now. 1978.
Which would make sense because like around 1977, I think, is the first. Actually, no, it wasn't. Yeah, well, let me look it up. When was Tom Baker's first? Tom Baker came to the show in 1975. So, but But I think we have a lot of the film elements for seasons 12 through 15 anyways.
Mhm.
But yeah, let's just say before we get on to season 7 as a whole, like what would you rate the story out of 10, Ben?
Maybe like 9.3, 9.4, pretty high. I still don't have a full basis of comparison, but it is really, really good.
I would say 9.5 because I think there's not a lot in this story that I would.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard for me even not to rate it a 10 because there's not a lot of me saying there's not a lot of negatives to me to be like to reduce it by that half a point.
Is it truly perfect though?
But like I know there's a couple of like Tom Baker ones that I would rate a 10, but like I would still stand by 9.5 because I think the story is one of the best. I'm definitely going to be watch this a ton.
Yeah. I don't know what took you so long.
It wasn't one that I saw the DVD for a lot as a kid. Like I don't even remember seeing the DVD at all. So I think that probably was a part of it. And I think like as a kid, right? The only thing I knew about Inferno was that the Brigadier had no mustache and he had the eye patch. That was Inferno. I knew for that iconic shot of the reveal that when the Brigadier is in the chair and he turns around in
Yeah.
the chair and it's oh my god, he's evil.
Well, you could have watched it when you moved into college instead of Ambassadors.
And that's I don't know why I decided to watch a press series at that point instead of this. But yeah, I would definitely rate this really highly on my Doctor Who scale.
Yeah.
I think now it's time. Let's talk about season 7 because when we talk about like seasons of Doctor Who, or I should say classic Doctor Who, this is definitely one of the higher ranked seasons just
Mhm.
because I think we can just start off by just saying like this isn't. There's a lot of Doctor Who seasons that have like one or two bad stories, but this is one of those seasons that has no bad stories to it.
Yeah. I mean, all I've seen is now seasons 1 through 7. I can tell you for each of those seasons 1 through 6, about half of them are good. Half of them are eh. But yeah, all 4 of these are pretty good to really good.
It kind of like bookends that the first one and the last one is very good, and then the middle two is. I could understand why somebody would say those are even great stories.
Yeah, they're weaker. They're definitely not my favorite.
Yeah.
I would definitely rewatch Inferno or Spearhead over Silurians, but I can see someone saying that, "Oh, those are one of my favorite stories."
Oh yeah, and I could definitely see why people say that season 7 is one of the best classic Doctor Who seasons.
Yeah.
I have definitely, I would say, I'm much more of a like I'm excited for us to get to more the early Tom Baker stuff because I would still rate those seasons, even though I haven't seen the full seasons. I would still rate like seasons 12, 13, and what I've seen of 14 higher than 7. But I really do love this season, and I thought that it had a lot of great moments and it was very consistent, which is not
Mhm.
which is not a word you can describe classic Doctor Who a lot of the times. Like classic Doctor Who really isn't a consistent show.
Yeah.
Something that I've noticed is that this season also is one that even the episodes that are very good or even just good, they don't even have moments that I would say really bring the stories down, right? There isn't like a thing that you're like, oh yeah, they have that bit and that bit really is bad. There's nothing that really tanks these stories. But most of them are consistent all the way through. You really the only thing you can say is that some of them due to them being 7-parters could be trimmed a bit better.
Yeah. I'm not gonna miss the 7-parters.
Which thank God this was the last 7-parter. So from now on we're gonna only be watching 4, 5, and 6-parters.
Is there anything that's longer than 6?
Only Trial of Time Lords, but I do not count that because that is not one story. Sorry, people. The only thing is if you would count, there's the math. I don't know what would the math be, but there is 2 3-parters in New Who, and you could say
Mhm.
those because those are 3 45-minute episodes. So that would be on par, I would say, of a 7-parter. But it's kind of different because those aren't like They have complete stories for the episodes, so it's not like it's just you watching one long 3-parter story. And then like something like we'll get to Flux one day. And Flux is another one that they did I don't know if you know this, but like the COVID season. And that's a 6-parter, but like that one, but also it's a 45 minutes.
So it's like a 12-parter, I guess.
But that's kind of harder also just because it's not like, again, that's not one story really. They have different locations.
I know, isn't it in the Sixth Doctor there are some like 45 minutes one?
Season 22 is all 45 minutes. There's one 3-parter, the 2 Doctors.
Okay.
So just to wrap this up, the best story, very good. Very, very good. And pretty good season overall.
Yes. Very, very good.
Any last words, Ben, to the audience?
Yeah, this was a great episode. Looking forward to The Master.
Do.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share this with all your Doctor Who fan friends and non-Doctor Who fans.
Please make sure to leave a review, negative or positive. We would like to hear your feedback. Next week we're gonna get Roger Delgado. I'm so excited. Goodbye, everybody.
Have a great day.